Hi, I am Emilio. I am the founder and CEO of Capitalist Conversations, as well as Global Business Live. I am excited to be here with my good friend, and welcome to the Inspiring Leadership Series. And I will hand over now to our host, Jonathan Bowman-Perks.
Thank you, Emilio. It's so lovely. And our interactions have always been full of fun and laughter. And I think you and I talked about this, that the other inspiring leaders, the 172 that have gone before you, there's an element of humility, a bit of humanity, and a lot of humor. And while it's not a joke show, there's some quite serious thing. If we can't take ourselves too seriously, I think one of my bits of tips I had over the years from various army officers or people with, don't take yourself too seriously. And I'm almost 60 now and still working on that. But look, great having you here. So would you just tell us about what you're doing now, Emilio, and the different things you're doing? And then we'll go back to early childhood and how that shaped you to bring you to today.
Sure. Yes, I currently am the CEO and founder of Capitalist Conversations, where this organization, what we do is we create and produce events that are intimate in nature for the purpose of allowing business leaders and other founders to connect in an intimate setting, to be able to network and be able to do business together in an intimate setting where they get to know each other really well. And I also just founded a new company called Global Business Live, where what we'll be doing is producing conferences such as the one that we have upcoming in winter, end of November, the Global Founders Entrepreneurship Summit. And we will also be producing tours with really successful business leaders in multiple cities around the world.
Brilliant. That sounds like a lot of fun. And
yes.
I'm looking forward to joining you on that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It won't be right unless you're a part of it.
You're very generous, Emilio. Thank you. So the Emilio that we meet today, take us way back. Who was it that shaped you, who influenced you, the values you have? The man that we're meeting today, with all our faults and our strengths, what was the life journey? Perhaps take 5-10 minutes. Tell us a bit about that and the kind of people who shaped you.
Yes, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, to my parents, Mariano and Rosa Guevara. My father emigrated to this country from Honduras, Central America. Interesting, what happened was my uncle, who just really passed away a couple of years ago at 103 years old.
Wow.
Was a merchant marine for the U.S. And because Honduras was an ally during the Korean War, my uncle was one of those service members that helped during the effort. And once the effort was over, they extended, the government extended those gentlemen that had fought and helped in the effort the opportunity to become citizens of the U.S. And my uncle took that opportunity, and he brought my father to this country. At that time, my father and my mother had two of my older sisters and my oldest brother. And so they came here with nothing, basically a great education, that they just were really just hardworking, a very spiritual people. And so they had myself and three my younger sisters here in the States, and we lived. I was born in Brooklyn, but I was raised in the South Bronx. And if you know anything about the South Bronx in New York City at that time, in the late 60s, early 70s, it was a very challenging community to live in, but I always tell people the one thing that was really interesting was that my father, Jonathan, he always shared with us that just because you live in the environment doesn't have to live in you.
Oh, I like that. Just because you live in the environment doesn't have to live in you. Wow.
Yes. And that was something that really stayed with us. It really stayed with us because it helped us to understand that we could take control of our lives, and that we could make decisions that could help us, to move forward in life. Now, that's not to say that it was easy. It was very challenging. We could have fell, victim to some of the negative situations in those communities, but we continue to work hard, and that led me to then my father sent us to Honduras for a couple of years, to live in Honduras for a couple of years. That was an experience that really helped to shape me as well, and I'll tell you why. Because when we lived in the South Bronx, we saw that as a poverty-stricken community, which it was. But when we went to Honduras and we saw what poverty really looked like outside of the United States, we realized that what we thought was ultimate poverty was not ultimate poverty, and that even gave us another perspective on life when we came back to be able to forge ahead and try to achieve the goals and dreams that we had set for ourselves. So at the age of 16, I began to develop this desire to want to be successful. I really a little earlier than that, I started reading some books, that my sister introduced me to. There was one particular book she introduced me to called Secret of the Ages, Jonathan, and by Robert Collier. And this book was a moment that really transformed my life, because I had never read a positive book growing up outside of the Bible at all at that age. And this book really enlightened me that I could use my mind, and I had the power within me to do anything that I had set myself up to do. And when I was 19 years old, came an opportunity, because at 17, I couldn't live with my parents at the time, Jonathan, because they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I had 3 younger sisters, and so you won't believe this, but my mother and my father had the bedroom. My sisters would sleep in the fold out beds in the living room at night, and then during the day they would put them back in the room, and then turn the living room back into the living room. And so at 17, I couldn't really stay there because it was getting a little too. So I went and got my own place in my last year of high school, and so I worked 2 part-time jobs, had my own place, and that was what my journey was like as a teenager.
Wow.
Yeah.
Real respect for you, Emilio, and for your family, and also I think there's this point about taking perspective. I think a lot of children these days are very fortunate. Depends where you are. Everybody's been, for example, in the endemic that we now call it. It's like being in a storm. Everybody's been in the storm, but everybody's been traveling in different boats of different sizes. Some have had to swim with a rubber ring. Others have been in a cruise liner. And so not everybody's experienced the endemic the same way. But I do think this point about perspective is so important. And my wife and I have 3 daughters and a son. And the 3 daughters all went away to different places in the world, parts of India, the slums of South Africa, the parts of Costa Rica and Peru. And they worked with some of the very deprived areas just when they were finishing school before they went to university, and helped other people far less fortunate than them. And it's made them all very balanced women, because they go, how lucky am I?
Right.
And also this whole point about giving back to others less fortunate than ourselves, without patronizing those people or belittling them, respecting where they're at. But I think perspective is crucial. Well done on that. Thank you. If you went back to the young Emilio, age 16, with all the wisdom you've accumulated now, how old are you now, may I ask?
I am 55 years old. Turned 55 on July 26th.
You're ageless. You could be about 45. Anyway, so here
and so are you.
I'll vote for you. You're on the program already. Definitely. You're my favorite. But knowing what you know now, age just 55, what bit of advice would you give to the young 16-year-old Emilio, which would apply to other young people? Don't worry about this, but focus on that. What would be the bit of advice?
I think that the advice that I would give myself at the age of 16 today would be, if I could go back, would be to invest more time in reading to learn better who I am and where do I fit. I think so. We're not taught that. That's not something that's you could say a part of you could say the curriculum of growing up, either from my parents or from schools or from any institution. We pretty much leave young people to figure it out, just giving them the basic the basic channels that you're supposed to follow. You go to grade school, you graduate at 12th grade, you go to college, and then you do this. So it's like everything's laid out for all of us and that part, I think, is a really crucial part. I would probably go back, if I could, do more reading, more learning, or more self-study at that age, if I could.
Yeah, great advice. And there's that the maxim that all leaders are readers, but not all readers are leaders. And that I have found, we discussed my dyslexia, that in the last 3 years, I have listened to 187 different books on leadership and Malcolm X biography and different stories and things like this. And I've learned so much from those. If only I'd started reading as much, or in my case, because I found reading so hard, but if I'd only listened to audiobooks, if they'd been around more, which they're harder to come by. When I was younger, I think I would have made some different choices. I would have been a better leader. I would have led better. I want to apologize now to the people I led badly when I was 18, as a young army officer. Because I only had a small amount of learning that I learned from the environment I was in, as you talked about the environment. Just because you live in the environment doesn't have to live in you. I do love that. So I think that's a really important point. And in your life and in your life story, what would you pick out as like the most happy, proudest moment of your life and what you learned from that? And also perhaps the darkest part of your life and what you learned from that, Emilio?
Yes. So I would say that one of my happiest moments, I would say, I have to tell you, would be at the age of 29, when I took a chance on myself to start my first business. I quit my job. I quit a great opportunity I had, and everything was going well. I had already bought my first home. I had 2 beautiful cars, and money in the bank, and I was only 28 years old, and I quit. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own company, and I remember I went to tell my father, who's deceased now, rest in peace. And I said to him, I said, Dad, I said, listen, I know everything's going well, but I really feel as though I want to take a chance on myself. I want to, really see if I can do this, I mean, if I'm going to do it, this is the time, I think, to do it. And he looked at me and he said, son, every man at some point has to find his journey to independence. And that's all he said. He didn't say anything else. That's all he said, And mind you, that was coming from a man who came to this country with nothing, and him and my mother saved the little coins. My father probably never made any more than $2 or $3 an hour in his life. But they saved all their little coins for years and built a 3-bedroom house in Honduras. They didn't spend anything outside of, and he was blind. My father would get on the trains in New York City. Every morning he would get up at 5 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock we were walking him to the train station to get on the train to go work for the National Association of the Blind in Brooklyn. and we lived, every day, and then we go have to pick him up, at 6 o'clock in the evening. And he did this to support his family, and this is where he got robbed. This is in New York City, in the Bronx. And so he would get robbed a couple times and mistreated a couple times, but he never stopped getting up every morning to go there. So he really inspired us to, and and I have to tell you, Jonathan, the older you get, the more you can appreciate those kind of examples. When you're young, you appreciate it, but you don't appreciate it quite the same way, And I was guilty of that. I don't think that I kind of appreciated all that he did and how he did it and what motivated him to do it at the time, And so,
and I really respect him for that. God, I just can't imagine how tough it was. I mean, just being blind in itself, not having one of your key faculties, but relying on people to help you, and then people taking advantage of you because you were blind, robbing you, yes, or abusing you, or whatever it might be. But also the superiority. People go, well, I'm not happy. I'm, I had one person, and I said to her, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm poor." I went, yeah. I said, you earn over $1 million a year. What do you mean you're poor? She said, well, look, my bonus is only $300,000 a year. My boss's bonus is $600,000. So I'm poor compared to him. I said, wow. You are living in a reality distortion field.
Yes.
Wake up, smell the coffee.
Right.
$2 an hour maximum.
Yes. That's what he. I don't think that he ever made it. And it was funny because I didn't really learn that, to be honest with you, really until about 5 years ago. I went to see my oldest sister in Florida, and we were at the dinner table. And you know how when you get around the dinner table, you start talking about the family and topics come up and things come up that and you always learn something you didn't know. Well, that day I learned that when she told me. She said, no, Dad never made any more than $2 something an hour when he was working at the National Society for the Blind. I said, wow, so these things give you perspective, like as you say, as you use the word perspective. They do. But he gave me that advice, and I went ahead. I was so excited, about it, and when you asked me what were two of the most, you said what was one of the most challenging days. Is that's correct? Was that the question?
Yeah, one of the most challenging and darkest times of your life.
Darkest times. What's ironic? I left and I started a business. But I was good in sales. I had been a salesman for 10 years in a company. I went from door-to-door sales to the professional division of sales. I became a national sales trainer. And then I became a regional sales manager for 6 states in the Northeast that generated millions of dollars of revenue. So I really thought that I knew what I was doing, right? Because listen, I mean, I'm the sales guy. I've been national sales trainer. I'm the troubleshooter. People have problems with sales. They call me. I'm the one who goes to take care of the problem. You know what I mean? And so I thought I was just really, I could, didn't think anything of all the other things. Because again, I come from the background I came from. I went from, at the age of 19, got this opportunity with a man that was a very successful business leader. He offered me this opportunity. I took it. I didn't go to college. I bypassed college, but I did really well for myself in those, in those years. So I thought I was just great, and and so the dark day came, right? Because the money started going out the door and there wasn't any money coming in, Jonathan, and lo and behold, I find myself, with foreclosure notices coming.
Wow.
And the worst thing, I don't know if anybody's ever been to foreclosure, but when you go into foreclosure, it's listed publicly. So the sharks come out. People start driving by your home, they start and you wonder, who are these people driving by my home? They drive by your home because your home is in foreclosure, and they're like sharks, right? to grab the opportunity, And so I wasn't able to get the business going fast enough. But prior to that, let me share with you, I had a beautiful car. I had a BMW 525, really nice, 1992. And this was in 90, I think it was 95, 96, right? And so I have the car parked in front of my house, and I have another car parked in front of my house. And one day I come drive up, and this was the ironic thing, Jonathan. I'm talking to a cousin of mine, and we're in the other car, right? And we went to the store. I left the house, went to the store, to the grocery store, and on the way, I'm just excited. I'm telling him about the business. I was telling him, I'm having some challenges, and I know I'm going to come through. And and we drive, and we park in the same parking spot where I normally park, and my other car is right next to me. And I kept the cover on the BMW, the pretty cover on it. We drive up, and I stop in the middle of the sentence because where's the car? Where's the car?
The car's gone.
It's gone. You go through those. Well, did somebody steal it? And da. And no, it has been picked up. The car has been picked up because you had fallen behind on the payments. And I'm just telling you, this is what happened. And I'm telling you, I kept it clean, and it was beautiful. And so I called a friend of mine, right? I called a friend of mine, and I said, listen, man, the thing was, Jonathan, I only had about 9 payments left on the car. There was eight or 9 payments. So it wasn't even that much. You know what I mean? And I think the balance was like $8,000 something like that. And I said to my friend, I said, listen, if you could just help me get the car out of impound, pay the money, the full amount, give me 90 days, I'll get it back, and I'll let you hold the title, and I'll get, get you back the money in 90 days. Good friend of mine. He said, yeah, I'll do it for you. 90 days later, couldn't do it. So I had to give him the title and give him the car. And then on top of that, I also lost the house.
Oh God, that's hard.
So that was a time, but let me just tell you.
What did you learn?
I'm gonna tell you what I learned. That's what I'm gonna tell you what I learned from that. One night, when I was really going through it with it, I couldn't sleep the whole night. I couldn't sleep, because of the stress, but then one day I had this epiphany. I said, listen, this is just all stuff. You didn't go into business to get stuff. You went into business because you have an idea that you want to see come to manifestation. And so I had to refer back to the books that I had read, and I said to myself, the people that come at you, who are the bill collectors or whatever, between the hours of 8 and 6, they're going to call you. After 6 o'clock, they go home to their families. They're not thinking about you. You're like one out of a million people that they have to call. So from now on, between the hours of 8 and 8, you do what they do. They're not thinking about you, and you don't think about them. You focus on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that, when I had that epiphany, I was able to. It didn't matter anymore. To me, it was about what I was trying to accomplish. The freedom. I had to understand that I did this not to keep up the lifestyle necessarily that I had. If I could have, it would have been fine. But since I didn't, that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was because I wanted my freedom.
Yeah. And freedom is a really interesting point, Emilio, because there are some of the richest millionaires, multimillionaires, who are actually prisoners of some little old lady who's their cleaner, who gives them a hard time. And so freedom
Right.
is very much an attitude of
Yeah.
mind. And
Yes.
there's that lovely saying that success is getting what you want. Happiness is wanting what you already have. And I
Exactly.
think a lot of people try and they make more money and then they want more things and then they got to
Hmm.
service all that and then more stuff and more stuff.
Yes.
And capitalism is a big part of what you do. We've got to
Hmm.
watch the dark side of capitalism, which is that marketeers make you want not just one Apple Watch, but like 5 or 6.
Right.
You need another one with a different band and a different color,
Yes.
and you've got to have
Hmm.
4 cars and a better car
Hmm.
than the neighbor,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it just can spiral out of control, as you saw at that
Exactly.
stage. You
Hmm.
overextended yourself. You then couldn't make the kind of money, but you still wanted to have the stuff. And
Exactly.
and I think of we discussed my brother dying of cancer at the age of just 63, but as he was dying, he wasn't thinking about his stuff. He lived very simply on probably about
Hmm. Hmm.
15 to $20,000 a year.
Hmm.
It was his family and it was his friends that he wanted beside
Hmm.
him at the end of the day, and he couldn't take it with him. There are no
Right.
pockets in a shroud, as my other brother said.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
can't take it with you.
That's a good one. Say that. What was that? There's no
There
pockets
are
in the.
no pockets in a shroud.
That's a
Okay.
good one. I have to remember that one.
Yeah. So let's go around the Inspiring Leadership Compass. Quick
Mhm.
fire kind of questions. Moral quotient, MQ, the first one, which is the sort of true north.
Mhm.
What if there were 3 fundamental values and beliefs that you've lived by, that you were brought up
Mhm.
with? What would they
Mhm.
be? And how have you coped when you let them slip? And how do you bring yourself back onto track?
Yes, I would say that there are 3 principles that I actually live by, and one is I try to make sure that my internal spirit is always right, you know, um, um, that your compass, because better than anybody, when your spirit is right. When your spirit is not right, it's because of feelings of guilt or other things that you are allowing to take over your spirit. So my thing is to try to make sure to keep my spirit right, to keep it positive. Secondly, I was heavily influenced by Dr. Wayne Dyer,
Yeah, yeah, love it, lovely guy.
and one of those principles that I adopted from his teachings was the power of intention. And so I always try to make sure that my intentions are pure. I try to make sure that my intentions are pure in anything and everything that I do in my relationships, in my anything that I take on. I try to make sure that my intentions, are pure. And 3, gratitude. To be always, always, always grateful. Those are the 3 that I have have adopted, and came to a point in life where those were the 3 that I felt were the most important, and I have internalized those to live by,
I
those
love
3
him. I
principles.
love him. No, and
Mhm.
Wayne Dyer. I was listening to one that I particularly listened to time and again, where he goes through Lao Tzu and the
Mhm.
Lao Te Ching or the Tao Te Ching, but it's
Yes.
basically
Mhm, mhm,
some of
mhm.
the old teachings
Right. Yes.
from 2,000 years ago, which are very relevant
Yes.
today. No,
Mhm.
he's been very influential on me too. Thank you for
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
PQ
Yes.
is the next one. Meaning and purpose. Why do you do what you do, Emilio? Tell me.
I do what I do because as I said, I was influenced by my how I grew up. Um, Being in the environment that I grew up of poverty in the South Bronx, and then having the experience when I was in Honduras for 2 years. Those experiences shaped me in terms of the fact that in this country you have the opportunity and the choice to make to have a better life for yourself. um, and if someone else can help you to see that, if you have not seen it for yourself, and show you and other examples and put them in front of you and show you what the possibilities are. I think that makes a contribution for us having a better country and a better world, because I think that the greatest gift that God gave all of us is the gift of imagination, because you don't have to ask anyone permission to use it. You have to have permission for a lot of things, but you don't have to ask anyone permission to use your imagination. And you can go as far, as wide, and as big as you want in your imagination. And I think that that's one of the beauty, one of the beauties of free enterprise. And when I say free enterprise, it's for enterprise, but it's also for anything else that you want to do. You know what I mean? And, you can do that. In other countries, you just can't do what we're able to do in our countries. That you can come up with an idea, and that idea could be the one idea that saves the world. I was sharing with somebody the other day on another podcast. I said, what's interesting? People down capitalism. I said, but I think that what we have to understand is that, capitalism has a definition. Like any other word, it has its definition. The definition doesn't change. You buy or you manufacture a good or a service. You mark it up and you sell it. You take the profit and you do it again. You know what I mean? And then what you do with that profit is now your own character comes into play. Your own integrity comes into play with that. Mm-hmm. So it's no different. I tell people then, if you're a doctor and you take the oath that if you're on the highway and you see somebody have a heart attack, you're going to stop, get out your car and try to save that person's life. That's the oath that you take as a doctor, Mm-hmm. But does every doctor that's ever passed by a situation like that stop? No, right? So it's that, but that doesn't change the oath. It doesn't change the wording of the oath. It's the application by the individual and its character and their character and integrity about it, right? So capitalism is good. It's one of the you can really look at the world and look at other governments that are maybe even one-party governments, and they've had to implement capitalism in order to even be able to lift their countries out of poverty. Yeah. And so I think that we have to look at it as a person. It's not the thing; it's the person.
Yeah,
right.
That's a good way. That's a good way of making it. Taking it from the system to the people who make it up. It's just like in any organization, a culture in an organization is made up by the leaders and the people and the way that they behave in it.
Exactly.
And that's a very well put. And if you take it from what gives your life meaning, purpose, and around the positive side of capitalism, let's move from there to you as a person, your health, well-being, your mental mm-hmm. health, your physical health. It's the third element of the 8 components. Mm-hmm. All the different things you've done. What do you do to look after your mental health? One tip, and to look after your physical health. One tip that you'd share with people. Just give us a couple of tips on those two.
Yeah. So from a physical standpoint, I do a lot. I walk. That's one of my main things. And it gives me the opportunity every morning to think about my day early in the morning. Think about what I want to do and what is it that I want to accomplish, and it's this kind of serenity. For me, it gives you this serenity to be able to just take a walk, and at the same time, you're really moving and exercising all the parts of your body. And from a mental standpoint, one of the things I've always done is read. I feel as though I have learned more through the life experiences of others by just reading and going through their journey with them in a book. I used to speak, when I would go speak to young kids, I would always tell them, this was before we have the internet now, but I would always tell them back then that the greatest and most powerful card you have in your wallet is your public library card. And because somebody can live an entire lifetime, and take that journey, encapsulate it in 200-300 pages, and you can go on the journey with them and learn so much that you didn't have to go through those 30 years they may have gone through. So, I think that books, and for me, it's autobiographies. I love autobiographies and learning about what other people's lives was like. And, and the fascinating thing about business leaders is there's so many people think, and they put us, as you well know, Jonathan, because of what you do, they put us in this box as if though the life is just that. We still have things that happen to us in our lives, situations, family, as you shared, your brother unexpectedly, we deal with all those things, as well. So when you read those autobiographies, not only are you learning about how to overcome challenges and obstacles from somebody who's been through challenges in business, but you also learn what did they do to manage different situations in their everyday life.
Spot on. No, and you have reminded me that I've learned an awful lot from the autobiographies. I also love, I'm reading The Gates of Hell by Stephen Pressfield, which was about the Spartans at Thermopylae and the training the Spartans went through, and how rigorous it was. And it takes me back to my military training, which is nothing like that, but the idea of train hard, fight easy, and that preparation. I think of all the challenges I've been through in my life, they've all taught me something, which has allowed me to cope with more challenges that I'm thrown at later on.
Yes.
So that brings me from the health and the well-being, the reading and the learning, and I do think like the most powerful card is that library card, the public library card. So whatever background you have the ability to go to a public library and learn from others. You haven't got, as one American Vietnam general said to me, he said, I was chief of staff of the British brigade that went across and trained in Fort Leavenworth in Kansas City, Kansas. And I was lucky enough to be mentored by this general who'd been in the Vietnam War. And he said, son, you haven't got time to make all the mistakes I've made in my life. He said, you need to read and you need to learn from other people. He said, and let me tell you, out there are some anti-personnel mines. I know where they are because I've blown my foot off on a few of them. And I can tell you where they are, so you don't need to step on them.
Right.
But overnight, the little bastards have planted some more. I don't know where those other ones are, but I know where you don't need to stand on these ones. So I thought that was just great advice.
That's a good one.
You haven't got time to make all the mistakes I've made. So let's find a shortcut. So quick fire questions. EQ, emotional intelligence. What would be your one tip on emotional intelligence? How you built, because you've got great emotional intelligence. It's so easy to build a rapport with you, Emilio. What was the one skill you learned about emotional and social intelligence that you'd pass on to other people?
I think if I have to, narrow it down to one, I think it's empathy. And, I think we're lacking a lot of that these days as well, but I think that it's empathy. I think that, being able to, I think that really pairs back to what we both talked about just a minute ago about the reading, because it's that exposure to other people's lives that allows you to be empathetic with when you so the thing about reading is that it teaches you for your own life, but at the same time it teaches you to be empathetic when you're leading other people, because those experiences now become your experiences. Right? So when you read the story of someone and what they've gone through, that now is, and you understand how it affected them when they're telling their story, that now becomes part of your ammunition. And so when you're leading other people, that helps you to be more empathetic with them, even though that what they're going through is not the thing that you're going through or been through, but because you read these stories, you're able to say, you know what? I understand.
Yeah. Brilliant. Which takes me from empathy, EQ, to CQ, which is what we call cultural intelligence or collective intelligence. Now, we talked before in the Bronx and elsewhere, you've experienced a lot of racism. And Black Lives Matter is a very important movement that's going on. This is long overdue, and there's still not a lot of things been dealt with this. With diversity, equality, and inclusion, what's your one view on how we can improve cultural intelligence, the way that we see about people who are different from us, whether skin color or background or sexual orientation? What's your tip there for people to be more understanding?
Yeah, and I think, I think it goes back to the word perception. Our perceptions are influenced by, our beliefs, and our beliefs are influenced by the environment in which we came up in, and so if, for example, in my situation, I grew up in New York City, and pretty much in New York City, it was always been known as the melting pot. So you end up having friends of all, different types of nationalities you get out. Then I spent 2 years living in Miami, Florida as well. And I went to school with another, another mix of individuals. So I think what it is again, so those experiences form my perceptions, what happens? I think that what happens is, if you haven't grown up in those kind of situations, you have to allow yourself to be able to say, at the end of the day, and that's if you're willing to, you have to have the willingness, the will to challenge yourself. What is the difference? We're all people. We're all, we're all people. We're all human beings, and pretty much, if you like I said, in my case, if you've talked to enough people and befriended enough people and have relationships with people of all types, you end up finding that out, that we all have the same challenges in life, the same type of hardships and the obstacles, and it may be a little different, but the feeling of it is the same, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me just be a little bit more illustrative, right? If somebody stabs your leg with a knife, or somebody shoots you in the rib, the two people, if somebody stabs one in the leg and one shoots one in the rib, as you've watched in every movie, they both scream.
Yeah. And
what are they screaming from? They're screaming from pain, right? Because the pain is the same. And so, I say that we have to take what's called initiative. We have to take the initiative to want to have the desire to want to understand other human beings and their culture, and where they came from, and why they are what they are, and why do they believe what they believe. And and I think that if you're willing to do that, I think that then we can begin to understand each other a lot better.
Right. No, fully agree. And as my old Sergeant Major said, everybody sits the same way on a toilet seat. It's just like it brings it down to reality. And with that upbringing that you had both in the South Bronx and in Honduras, and the setbacks you had, like losing your house and losing your cars and things like that, you learned a lot of resilience. What would be your top tip on resilience and picking yourself up in times of adversity?
Resilience has a lot to do with motive. You're only going to be as resilient as what it is that motivates you to do what it is you do and why you do it. The people that are the most resilient is because they're the most committed. There's something that motivates them that goes beyond, money or anything like that. It goes beyond currency. There is a mission, there is a movement, there is a desire, that's burning for them to want to accomplish something. And because that is the motive, then they are willing to go through anything because they are visualizing the end, and in visualizing the end, it's no different than, as somebody who starts a race and there's a finish line. The best ones have been trained to focus on the finish line, not to the guy on your left or the guy on your right. You got to focus on the finish line, and I think that resilience is tied to motive. It's tied to why is it that you do what you do? Because if it is a weak motive, then you will not be resilient.
Beautiful. I love that. And justify the begin with the end in mind, as you and I have read with Stephen Covey.
Yes, 7 Habits.
7 Habits. Brand, BQ, and then legacy, and then we'll talk about exec teams and your favorite book. BQ, your brand, your reputation. Amelia, a lot of the leaders that I coach, I take them through 360 feedback. Have you ever had 360 feedback about you, and what did you learn as a top thing you needed to work on from any feedback that you've ever had?
Yes, I did. And I, managing a lot of the sales groups, and there was a perception of me at one time that I was arrogant when I was younger and was managing these teams. I didn't think that about myself, but there was this perception that, I that I, thought that I knew it all, that I, that they couldn't tell me, anything about, and so I really had to take a good look at myself, because especially when you're young like that and you're having that kind of success, you really begin to believe your own, what they say, how do they say that?
Believe your own hype, or
you believe
drinking your own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and I was drinking my Kool-Aid,
That's great. So from brand to legacy, what would you like your legacy to be in your personal life and your work?
The legacy of my personal life, I would love to be known as a great, that I was a good husband and a good father. I love my family. It's only 3 of us, my wife and my daughter. And incidentally, when you said send me a picture, of something you like to do, I had picked out one picture that I said where it was myself and my 8-year-old daughter dancing to salsa, because I was trying to teach her the culture and of the music, and we were dancing. And I said, I'm gonna send them this because I love spending time with my daughter and doing different things with her. We have a great relationship because it took us a long time for us, my wife and I, to have her. You know what I mean? Nearly 7 years we worked on that. So it was a blessing. And so my legacy from personal life is to be known and that I was a great husband, and that I was a great father. That I was a family man. That that to me, from a personal standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important.
Yeah. So I didn't see that picture because I thought, well, he's thinking more in terms of other things. So I sent you the one where I was kind of traveling, looking with the Pacific Ocean in the background, something like that.
That was a cool picture too. That was a cool picture.
Yeah.
Now, in your sales jobs and various teams you've worked with, you've seen lots of different teams. What would be your top tip for turning a toxic team around into a high-performing team? What one thing would you do?
Okay, so I don't know if this is going to come off in as a way that's acceptable for some people, but the one thing I did learn, Jonathan, I learned that you can't change people. When you use the word toxic, to me, that's almost, I think some people, when they're in that mindset, they're almost far gone. And I think that some people you can, once you find what is their underlying desire. Part of leadership is being able to understand people and being able to know what their underlying desires and their motive is. What is it that they really want? But then there are people that you would call toxic, that they really tell you who they are, why they are the way they are, and that they're fine being the way that they are.
Mm.
And if you're not careful, there's a delicate balance, because what you do, as they say, a rotten apple will rotten up the rest of the apples. When you enable toxic people to continue to stay in a situation, you are sending a message to those that are really team players that it's acceptable.
Yeah.
And so it's a quiet message, when in tolerating, a person. And when I say that, I'm talking about a person that just really does not want to change, that, their motives, their underlying desires are that they don't feel that they need to change for any reason, because they just want to do what they want to do. Yeah. So I think that it depends on the people of the team.
Yeah, that's very good.
That's my honest answer.
I love it. And I would agree with you. And we're going to talk about a favorite book on leadership or courage. Now, we both agreed that Shoemaker by Joe Foster was one of them.
Yeah.
Was one of them. And he's a special guy. He's been on the series.
Yeah.
But as another autobiography that you found very inspirational, what would you pick as your second choice?
Okay, so I know this is not your question, but I got three. Can I do three?
You can do three.
Yes.
I'll let you do.
So Shoemaker, when we talk about one of the most recent books that I read, Joe Foster, amazing. If I had to go back to some of the ones that I read in the past, and one that inspired me and helped me change my life, it would be S.B. Fuller. He was a Black pioneer in business, and this man came up during the Jim Crow era, and he built an enterprise in the 40s and 50s when Black men were not supposed to be able to do that. And so he really inspired me. He mentored my mentor, and it changed my life. And I still read his book because of what he was able to do.
What's the book called by S.B. Fuller?
Pioneer in Black Business, S.B. Fuller. And I can share a copy with you if you like, So, yes. And then, but if we talk about a leadership book, it would have to be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yep.
That book, I tell you, it's if you really want to understand people, and aside from reading autobiographies and stories, Dale Carnegie and How to Win Friends and Influence People is a book that I still refer to.
Yeah. And if you're so right, and if you look on my website, among my book reviews, it's the number one. Is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I would agree with you. Okay. And would you do now just a final introduction of who you are and what you do, and then your 2-minute top tip, and we'll bring things to a close and we'll have a chat when it finishes. Okay. So do I count down? Yeah, just go. Off you go. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hi, I'm Emilio Antonio Guevara, and I am the founder of Capitalist Conversations, and as well as a new company, Global Business Live. And my mission, my whole purpose in life with those organizations, to really promote free enterprise, to promote capitalism, to help people to follow their dreams, and to use the greatest gift that we all have as human beings. And I believe that gift is the gift of imagination. And so I challenge you to use it. And I just want to thank my good friend, Jonathan Bowman-Perks, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this great leadership series. Thank you very much indeed, Emilio. Great pleasure to have you here. And good luck with what you're doing, helping so many other people in so many countries. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And for me.